When the officers first join, what we found is that where they live over the course of, like, say 5 to 8 years depends a lot on where they live in their first month of the job. And because of the cost of living in DC, folks were starting off living outside of DC, and therefore we're continuing to do that. So the second program is not as part of EHAP, it would be a separate fund, and it's to, and I believe it's, the number will come to me, but I think it's just over $1 million, 1.2 million. That when people first join the force, if they live in DC, we will give them, for those first 12 months of rent, we will give them a subsidy for the first 12 months on the idea that if you live here in your first few months, you're probably going to stay beyond that, because you'll, as you know, as human nature, you settle into the neighborhood you're in, you get used to where your grocery store is, where you park, where the subway is. So that's the idea behind that, and that would be, the EHAP will be available to all folks. That other one is going to be really focused on new recruits as they're making decisions about where to live when they first come here.
My second question is, well, comment and then a question about the Use of Force Review Board. Two, I like the comments you made about the synergy between the other agencies, and because my area is included within the Summers Crime Initiative, that is very important, because I am a firm believer that you can't simply demand that the police do more. It's, you have to have a strategic partnership with all of the agencies. DCRA needs to make sure that vacant properties are properly attended to. DDOT has to make sure that the lights are fixed quickly, tree trimming, that sort of thing. And I'm very pleased that those things are happening. But I just want to make sure that we increase the capacity, and particularly with DPW, because we want to make sure that we're constantly supporting law and order. Finally, I spoke to you before about the Use of Force Review Board. Chief Newsom is open to that. I think it's time that, well, the district is a leader in many ways regarding how our police department is very professionalized, and we have excellent community policing accomplishments that we can certainly build on. And looking forward with that leadership role for the nation, I'd like us to take a really serious look at the Use of Force Review Board and putting some civilians on that, and not just picking people for political reasons, but I think it should come with some training so that we can see what the police have to deal with, what they have to do, so that we can understand what they're seeing, sort of what they're feeling, and also provide a very much needed citizen perspective. So I want to talk to you more about that.
DC, but also every city, the job is never done when trying to look at how to reduce unnecessary or excessive uses of force, and then when it happens, how it gets reviewed. And so we have not declared ourselves having all the answers, and I'm certainly open to a conversation.
And thank you so much for being a recipient of all my emails. I think I copied you in most of my emails, which you've been very
gracious. You're not the only one. I will just say, because I caught it in a question earlier about the tennis shoes. I want to say we did, but I haven't called through one myself. So to say I haven't done it yet, and I call 311 when I have issues, just to also see how it's working. But we wanted to specifically add a code for people who are calling 311 with that very issue, and there was not a code for it. It wasn't a pothole, it wasn't a tree, and so we added a code, which I'm doing on the faith of someone saying it was done, but added a code in 311 because we found that it was unfortunately not uncommon for folks to call with that request. It does go to DPW. I'm sure the officers will take care of it, or I probably already called right now. But if you see the problem and have the good fortune of being at an ANCB and to talk to an officer, there is a code in 301. And when I leave here, I'll call it myself to double check it. I apologize profusely if I'm wrong.
Hakeem and Lionel in the back, they've been very responsive in addressing those issues.
Hakeem, did I give a true statement or a false statement right now?
I believe it was actually in my report, actually.
Okay.
So if you call in, you'll be able to do it.
Okay.
It's not on that.
Okay.
Mr. Donovan, I have a question, and I'm also sort of, well, I'm gonna go with my ambulance question. When you stated that, and I am aware that I actually witnessed someone calling 911 to go to the doctor.
Okay.
In my neighborhood. So, in those cases, are you sending the private ambulance? Was the nurse actually talking to the nurse?
So, right now, for someone who calls with something that's not a significant emergency, that's the purpose of the private ambulances. We're going to reserve our city fleet and the city employees for the higher priority calls. Now, what the vision is for next year is when someone calls 911, and this will be a lot of training that will have to go into this. And we will not be the first jurisdiction to do this. There's not a lot of them, we won't be first. They will get connected to a nurse who will talk to them, much like if you call your doctor or your insurance company, you sometimes have a nurse line. At the conclusion of this one, for those who are Medicaid eligible, so the lower income individuals, there will be a same day transport that will not be an ambulance at all. Because ambulances are an expensive way of transporting people, even for the private ambulance. Medicaid right now does have some relatively underused services that we're going to make. Right now, they're not same day, and we're going to require that they be same day service. As well as how the nurse will have basically, think of this as dispatch. They'll have a computer monitor that will tell them where there are community health clinics, urgent care clinics that are aware of the nurse triage program and connect people to that. So the person at the end of it, if it works out, and this is in the cities that do this, this is how it works, is that you may call at 10, and if you can wait until 12, there'll be a transport that's not an ambulance that will take someone to a urgent care clinic and not the ER. And these are transports that, again, they're in the city right now. They're not same day right now, and we have to make them same day for this to work. And they're relatively underused, so we're going to bring them to the full capacity that we're funding for them.
Okay, so in the follow with that, so is this like, in the suburbs, they have urgent care facilities that run from 10 to 10? Will this have a set hours, or will it be 24 hours?
That's a great question. So, some of these are to be determined. Where I think it's going to happen, though, is that there are community health clinics and urgent care clinics that usually the longest ones go till 10. The availability probably will drive this. However, if someone's willing to wait until, if they call it midnight, 8 a.m., then an appointment can be made then. And we had a debate as a city. Some cities do advertising campaigns to try to discourage use of 911 for non-emergencies. We looked at that and chose not to do that because people are calling with some are calling to go to the doctor, but most are calling with what they consider to be a real health need that may not be an emergency. And so the question for us is, well, why don't we try to take advantage of the fact that they're all calling 911 and have an outcome that's different than either a police officer or a firefighter EMT. And sort of when we looked around the country, there's about 2 or 3 cities that had our problem, and instead of discouraging people, they decided to help redirect them through nurses that act not unlike a nurse at a doctor's office. And so we're going to try to follow in those footsteps that you said.
Then for the cadet program, one of the things, I grew up in Washington, so we always had police officers in the school, officer-friendly program. So that made that knowledgeable of a career for me. My first interaction with a police officer wasn't negative. So with that, in turn, you had the cadets. A lot of times, by the time when people really start making career choices, then their first interaction with a police officer has been negative, whether it was I'm hanging on the corner, I'm picking up a candy bar at the 7-Eleven, that kind of thing. So is there anything that's going to put more police officers in a more of a friendly mode with younger people so they can become police officers that live in the city? Because a lot of your recruits come from Pennsylvania, all other places. So then we have a new recruit who's new to the city, new to the job, and he doesn't understand the dynamics of growing up in Washington,
Yeah, no, I
being a
agree.
Washingtonian, and so that causes friction when officers come and interact with the communities. And then, when you said housing, to me, like in our Trinidad area with the booming rents, you would have sticker shock. If you just on the job for 12 months and then you lose your subsidy after 12 months, your rent can go up substantially.
Okay.
So I would suggest like maybe 24 months to really get them ingrained into the, especially if they're renting in their neighborhood or where they serve. Could that be an incentive? You know what I'm saying? If you're serving this neighborhood, you're renting this neighborhood, give them a little bit more so we really can get those officers ingrained. So if you do come from Pennsylvania, but now you're walking the streets, you're walking your dog with me, I see you and you see me, and that way we can have better relationships, because that's one of the key things with police officers, you know, when they, like I said, because, you know, different time, it changes. I'm over 50, so it's a big difference. But like I say, police officers were coaches because their sons went to school. So they were coaches, and because of the flexibility of the job, you know, they could do things more. So we get them more involved in the neighborhood. So we actually would know these officers, which means, also that means that, you know, when the officer knows me as a 16-year-old, it's a reprimand from another parent. It's not an arrest, even though I did something wrong. So then, you know, so that also keeps that kid to maybe, okay, this is the change in my life I'm gonna make, that I'm gonna be a police officer.
Yeah, no, I go to a lot of community meetings, and even in communities where individuals have negative experiences with police, in DC they'll often say, I'm for the police if the police are like, and they'll typically say someone's name, like Officer X, and that's usually that, they know the person's name because the person got to know them. So that is the goal, and let me try to, there's a lot packaged in there, I'll try to do my best with this. The school resource officers, which Officer Friendly became the school resource officers, none of that is changing. The two things that have changed is last year at the Anacostia High School, the city opened up a public safety academy. Now that includes not just police, that's future forensic scientists, future firefighters, but also future police. So now someone in high school can go to the public safety academy and take coursework that orients them towards something in public safety. We had the first graduating class will be graduating, and a number of those will be entering the cadet program right away. What we found with the cadet program is that the age was limited to 18. And so the cadet program is that if you live in DC, we pay for your college, 60 credits, and you get a salary while you do that. You help out and work in a civilian capacity at MPD. You graduate, get your credits, enter the police academy. There's a lot of folks, they would hear about the program or decide what they want to do for their life when they are aged out. And so we found a lot of interest when 19, 20, 21-year-olds, when people are more, you know, at the age when they're more thinking about, you know, what do I want to do for the next 10 or 15 years? So we passed, and this is, you know, with Councilmember McDuffie and the mayor, worked together to pass a bill that increased the age to 24. So now we are able to get some of the young adults who may not have heard about that program when they were high school students. And what I'll say about all of this, including housing, is that around the country, people are trying to recruit more officers and are having a harder time doing it. We pay a little bit more, but the cost of living is high. And so what we do, and I don't hide from this, is that we will try things. And I encourage the police chief, I encourage my team in City Hall, like, to experiment, because we ultimately aren't going to know what's going to move the needle until we try stuff out. We have two examples. The cadet program, increasing it, we are doubling the budget for that because we saw a doubling of interest when we changed the law, increasing it from 18 to 24. And now we're like, wow, you know, we could have raised the age and not got that kind of interest, and we would never have known until we tried it. We changed the law to make it easier for people who were cops elsewhere to laterally transfer into MPD, make it easier for military officers to lateral in. We tried that, we got exactly one person out of that. Now, we never would have known that. We only got one because there were typically reasons, it turned out, people wanted to leave their police department of record. in which we did not want them coming here. Issues around discipline.